what a difference a few hours makes in football. It was only yesterday that I said that it was so important that Tim Steidten picks the next manager. I didn't want it done by ballot, I didn't want it done by committee or by petition. I just wanted the expert that David Sullivan had hired in Tim Steidten to be the person to ultimately pick the manager. It seems that's not the case. Now, there's something that's not a particularly good look here. There's been a number of stories, and I am mindful that today is match day, and we really should be talking about the match. And I will talk a little bit about it, but let's be fair, the match today's a bit of a dead rubber, really. It's not that important, although the manager and Kurt Zuma would not have you think so. They're talking about 3 cup finals to qualify for Europe. Yeah. We probably did have those, but that was probably Newcastle, Fulham, and Crystal Palace. We're sort of long. The horse has bolted now. The ship has sailed on that one, I'm afraid to say. Anyway, we'll get to the Chelsea West Ham stuff in a minute. Let me just tell you where we are right now with this Julian Lopetegui position, and that is, it appears that David Sullivan is using his favoured agent, Will Salthouse, to get the deal over the line. Now, I don't know if that means that Lopetegui is a Will Salthouse client, but it's not a good look, because if he is, it would appear that Sullivan is choosing the client of his mate rather than the recommendation of Tim Steidten. And the latest news on, I'm talking about the recommendation of Tim Steidten, the latest news on that is, and this was broken by TalkSport, it's not my news, that both Mark Noble and Steidten had tried to put their foot down and really insisted that West Ham should go for Amorim. Now, that tells me 2 things. Number one, it tells me that there's a disconnect between David Sullivan and Mark Noble and Tim Steidten. The other thing it tells me is that Amorim's probably still available. I've no doubt he was flashing his knickers at Liverpool, but they weren't too impressed. They preferred the Dutch pair, quite frankly, and it didn't happen. So I think now he's probably put himself in a difficult situation with his club, with Sporting Lisbon, and quite possibly he may now take his second choice, or third choice, whatever West Ham might be, but he might be willing to do that. So he's available. The compensation is 12 million euros, apparently, whatever that is. People are saying £10 million. Couldn't tell you. West Ham need to pay it, and West Ham should pay it. And that's what Tim Steidten, according to TalkSport, Tim Steidten and Mark Noble have both said to David Sullivan, we need to do this. We need to do this to progress the club. If all the reports are true, and they possibly aren't, if all the reports are true, it could well be that he is rejecting. So Mark Noble is the sporting director. Tim Steidten is the director of football. So it may well be, this sounds crazy just saying the words, that the West Ham owner will be rejecting the advice of his sporting director and his director of football, and instead taking the advice of one of his favoured agents. I mean, it's terrible. It's terrible. I mean, it's so bad. I was going to say I would expect them to walk. That's not for me to say, because I think it's easy to view Mark Noble and Tim Steidten as the same. They're not. Mark Noble would have had a really, really good and fairly paid professional football career in the Premier League. I'm sure he's a millionaire a few times over. Tim Steidten, it's highly unlikely that he is. I don't know what salary Tim Steidten's on, but I would imagine he's certainly not in a position to walk away from the job. But it doesn't mean he won't be looking for something else. But I wouldn't blame either of them. If they've both been put in a position, actually Sullivan chooses the client of his mate or his chosen agent rather than their advice, then they have every right to walk away. And I wouldn't be disappointed if they did so. I would understand if they felt they had to do that. It was morally the correct thing to do. I totally understand it. Absolutely, guys. You have to go. Who could possibly operate under these circumstances? Well, I guess David Moyes can't he? And as I said, I mentioned in yesterday's video, and I don't think that's overly reflective of. I was trying to find reasons in yesterday's video to like Lopetegui, to maybe admire some of his work, and just wonder why everybody was so against him. And I do wonder, this is more a case of, playing the ball rather than the man, which I think is sort of understandable, really, on this one. it's not so much the thought of getting Lopetegui in that terrifies me. It's the fact that Sullivan may not be listening at all to Tim Steidten. I think Steidten's been a very, very patient boy, really, over the past year. Waiting, he had no power when David Moyes was there, and he's probably been waiting for this point. This will be the time. His time to shine. Now, there was another story which was running alongside all of these. It was from Football Insider. I mentioned Football Insider the other day. They were the people that broke the news about Amorim flying over. Nobody else had that story. They did. They broke the news. So they've clearly got some context. They ran with a story yesterday saying Tim Steidten had been told to hold off on any of his recruitment until a new manager was in place and could sign off on it. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if you were the director of football? You've got your own ideas what the squad lacks, what the squad needs, where it needs strengthening, where it needs stripping out. You've just managed to see off who he would have perceived David Moyes to be someone that was stopping him from recruiting, which is his job. That's his job, right? And you could certainly see that in January with the whole Calvin Phillips thing. If that's also true, if they're all true, and as I say, you don't know that everything's going to be true, but if they're all true, that David Sullivan is what he's done is he's rejected his suggestion as a manager to get a new first team coaching, and he's been told to stop his search for players, then what's the point? I mean, there is no point. Honestly, it is. I've said it before. It's like getting Gordon Ramsay and asking him to make a pot noodle and a cup of instant coffee. There's just no point. There really isn't any point at all. The Mark Noble thing is, again, I mean, I think primarily he's there to build a pathway between the first team and the youth academy, and that ain't happened, and it doesn't appear to be happening. What's the point? There's no point at all, particularly if his other advice is not being taken on board. Anyway, so that's that. Not particularly good, actually. Not particularly good at all. I think this has to work. If what Sullivan does is Sullivan overrules all of them, don't we expect to see one or both walk away? And basically they bring Lopetegui in. If it doesn't work, I don't think there's anywhere for Sullivan to go. I really don't. I'd be very surprised in the West Ham fan base. I just don't think there'd be anywhere left for him to go, really. So, hell of a risk. Ballsy move from his point of view. There are still rumours, by the way, that West Ham have not given up. But when they say West Ham not given up, I very much get the impression it is people like Steidten, people like Noble. You'd certainly get the idea that that Sullivan has made his decision. And listening to reading an interview on ESPN with Lopetegui, there is a man that's very, very confident he's just about to get a Premier League job. That much is clear. You just read it. You're left in no doubt that he's very confident about that. Before I talk about David Moyes and the game today, Chelsea and the Kurt Zouma stuff, please point in the direction of the video sponsor for today, which is Match Bingo. Get it downloaded today. Honestly, get it downloaded today. Get your card in for the West Ham game. If you want to know what Match Bingo is, well, Match Bingo is a perfect combination of bingo and football. You never thought that'd be a combination, did you? But it works. It works really well. Works so well that between 40 and 50 of you guys watching this have actually won money on it. I've won money on it myself as well, which was an absolute miracle. I never win money on anything at all. There are a ton of free-to-play games on there. However, it is a gambling app, so it's 18 years and above. However, the stake on each game is £2. £2 per play. So it's not like you can empty your bank account and stuff like that. It's a lot of fun. It's a good game. There's loads of freebies on there, like this week there was a Eurovision contest game that was on there. That was paying out over $1 grand on the prize pot. There was loads. All the darts games were free, all of them. There's always bingos every week, which is always a free game, and there's usually a Premier League or a Championship game, which is free on it. There's so many free games on this app. So if you fancy winning some money and you don't fancy putting anything down, then sign up to the app. Please, all we ask is, though, that you use the link in the description below or use the QR code. And, Match Bingo. Great app, great company. David Moyes, Kurt Zouma, before we finish. I find it so frustrating to listen to them talk. It's like this rallying cry. It's like they're trying to cheer everyone up. Come on, you guys. It's the push for Europe. You think, come on, do us a favour. Where was this? Where was this when we needed it? Where was this at half-time against Aston Villa? Where was this at half-time against Newcastle? Where was this before the Crystal Palace game? Where was this? Where was the urgency then? What this is belated, delayed urgency long after the ship has sailed. We don't need the urgency now. It's too late. It's too late. Manchester United, right, they are... I mean, the last time I looked at the league table, which granted was, look, the league table might have changed, but the last time I looked at the league table, Manchester United were five points ahead of us with a game in hand. So they got 4 games, we got 3 games. They're 5 points ahead. Plus, our goal difference is shocking. It's awful. Basically, they're 6 points ahead of us. I mean, it's preposterous. It's like they haven't done the maths. They haven't received the memo that the Europa coefficient has changed. That actually, it's not 8th places anymore. It's 7th. 3 more cup finals, they're saying. What are you banging on about? Do you think anyone believes this nonsense? I honestly, I do wonder, actually, with this, it's the only bit of... I think it's not relevant so much, but it is really the only way that I think Moyes can sort of galvanise any interest and keep any interest up to see him through the final 3 games. I don't know what he's doing the final 3 games. Look. I mean, I'll tell you what. If we beat Chelsea, great. And it'll be great. It'll be great to beat Chelsea. No doubt about it. But you still look at the fixtures. It's still next to impossible for us to finish 7th. Why wait until it's almost mathematically impossible to do all this stuff? I just don't get it. I don't understand it at all. And this whole thing as well about it, all this is doing, it's not helping. Not against the last home game. But would actually be really nice, I think, if the club would have come out and they would have said, look, thank you for David Moyes, do the statement now. He's going to manage the last couple of games or whatever, but his last home game will be against Luton. We'd like to thank him. We'd like to thank him for the Conference League. Then at least people would understand, people would know. It would just make it a better day for all concerned. For David Moyes, he could probably do a lap and have a clap and all the rest of it. But I'll tell you what, with everything hanging over him and all the rest of it, and what's hanging over the club, and I don't know, it's just been handled really, really badly. As I often think about all of this lot, I was going to say they understand much about football. I don't know. I tell you what, none of them seem to understand about people. I've always wondered about that. I really have. This is not a good way to manage the situation from anyone's point of view. And that's from the board down to them. I don't think Moyes handles people well. I don't think he handles his players well, particularly players that are on the periphery of the squad. Or I don't think anyone. This is weird. It's just weird. It's like they need to have I don't know, a people person director or something. I'll tell you what, they wouldn't get listened to either. I just find the whole thing a little bit weird, really. I do. So there you go. So big game against Chelsea. It's not. It's being drummed up as one. For the life of me, I don't understand why. But anyway, there you go. So it's match day. Does anyone else feel like that? It's hard. But we've been spoilt. That's why. We've been spoilt, you see. I guess there would have been a time when we would have been really happy just to have been safe and not to have to worry about, the last 3 games and to, be secure and sort of safe in the middle of the Premier League. Yeah, I guess we'd have been very, very happy for that to happen. I guess it's a little bit grumpy of me not to be grateful for that. But, I mean, there's so much other crap going on at the club at the moment. You just end up being worried about bloody everything. Anyway, myself and Gia will see you an hour and 5 minutes before kick-off. Don't forget to get that match bingo downloaded. I'm covering, I don't know where I've put the logo, basically. I'm covering both bases by pointing up there. I haven't done the editing yet, clearly. We'll catch up with you with the lineups hour and 5 minutes before the game.